I mean, how gullible do you think the American people are? And I guess they're pretty gullible.
Well, they probably haven't even followed the thing. And, they just don't have any interest. They don't care.
Well, they're going to care when they lose their job and when they lose their home and when they lose their pension fund, when they lose their insurance policy and they destroy the value of our currency. They're going to care a lot, Bob. It may take a little while, but I think everybody is going to be badly hurt or destroyed, in the coming months and years.
Well, just go back to the 1930s, and the situation today is far, far worse, without going into detail, than it was then. And the value of things went down between 60 and 90%. And so it'll probably be worse than that this time. And these people just don't know what lies ahead, because there's very few people alive who experienced that last depression. And there are only a handful of people around who remember it by being told about it by people who lived through it. People like you and I. And so they don't have, it's an abstract to people. It can never happen here. It's not going to happen now. And, it's going to go away. They'll fix it. And of course it's not going to be that way. And so half the population is ignorant. They can't read or write. They're just dumb. And then the other half of the population gets some kind of idea of what's going on, and maybe 15% figure there's something dramatically wrong. And there's probably 5% who really understand what the problem is. And one of the problems with radio and television is they're not allowed to come out with the truth. And even the newsletter writers, most of them will not tackle the subjects that they should be, and telling the people about the truth and why things are happening. They want to be accepted, and they don't want the government on their back. And that's why the public, in part, is not getting the news. And the only thing that's going to wake these people up is having them on the street, no place to go, no place to live, not even a car to live in. That's been repossessed. And there's going to be a lot of very, very angry people. And if these insiders think that they can control the people in America, never happened.
Well,
They're going to go down to defeat this time, and this time it's going to be woefully difficult for them.
Well, we know, for instance, that the government over in Iceland has collapsed. We know that there are massive demonstrations regularly over in Greece. We know the demonstrations in Lithuania and Latvia are now all related to this financial collapse in their system. We know that there are all sorts of demonstrations over in communist China, where they today have at least 10 million people who have been working in the factories are all out of work. But we're going to see that here before very long, I fear.
Well, China's debt is a big problem as well. And, they have so much work in progress. They're going to have to do some selling of their U.S. dollar assets. I don't see how they can get around it. And, they got this project going for $648 billion. They hold about, probably about $800 billion in treasuries, and probably about, I don't know what that number is.
Well, I think they figure it's probably, maybe about another $500 billion in bonds,
figure.
Things like that, Freddie Mac.
They're holding at least $1 trillion in U.S. denominated paper. And that's going to come through sooner or later. I don't think they can avoid that. And any unemployment, any growth less than 8% of GDP sends riots berserk. And they just reported 6.8 for the fourth quarter, and they're probably lying. And I would say next year, 2009, I think we're probably looking at a net of probably around 5.5% that they'll admit to. Well, they're going to have half the country up in arms.
Well, you know, it was very interesting. They had a program on 60 Minutes last night about some town out in the Midwest where DHL, the carrier, had pulled out, and about a third of the people were unemployed. And they were saying, you know, they admitted that, you know, about 7.2% are unemployed. But if you look at the underemployed, the people who've either had to take a drastic cut in their hours or maybe only working half-time, that gets up to 13%. And then, of course, if you get the people who just aren't looking for work anymore, who've gotten discouraged, you're getting up to 16 or 17%. Why, they sounded just like Bob Chapman.
Well, saints preserve us.
I was really surprised it came out on 60 Minutes. It was a very powerful program, and you couldn't help but get tears in your eyes. You thought of all these people losing their homes and losing everything, pulling their kids out of school. But of course, this is all contrived by these elitists, these wealthy elitists who want to bring pain and suffering to our country to force us into their system of world government. And they're doing the same thing to the whole world. And I think that the average American doesn't understand that the economic contraction is worldwide. I think England's having a lot of problems, aren't they, Bob?
Well, I think England is right on the edge of bankruptcy. I mean, the whole country. And it's just a question of how long. And we can get a lot of intelligence from watching England because we'll take the same path. And when you see England say, you know, we're insolvent, we're going to have to devalue the pound, we're going to have to do this and that. When you see that, you'll know that we're probably 6 months behind. And let's see how long they can stave it off. But, you know, the U.S. is on the same track, and they might, from what they've said, the intonation is that when all these countries are on the verge of bankruptcy, what'll probably happen is these international elitists who control these governments, many of them, they'll say, well, we're going to have devaluation all at the same time. And so everybody defaults, everybody devalues, and they create a new international unit, and then they've got revolution throughout the entire world. And I wouldn't want to be them when the revolution starts, because people know who they are. They know what they're doing. They're going to exterminate them.
Well, I think it's really difficult for the average American to realize that the United States is bankrupt. It's bankrupt morally. It certainly ought to be pretty obvious from, you know, what we're doing as far as marriage and homosexuality and abortion. But we're bankrupt fiscally as well, and certainly we're having to borrow several $1 billion every day. They're talking about a $1.2 trillion debt this coming year, this year 2009. But I think it's going to be closer to $2 trillion. What are your thoughts, Bob? I mean, where's the money going to come from?
I projected some time ago 1.3.
Right.
But I'm seeing estimates at 2, and so it's 1.3 plus.
I mean, but basically, of course, you have to then include this new stimulus package. They're talking about $850 billion.
No, that won't include that. If you throw that in, maybe it's $3 trillion. I mean, the numbers are colossal.
And where's the
money? American public doesn't care.
But of course, the thing is that where's the money come from? Nobody ever asks where it comes from. And how soon will we be like it is in Zimbabwe today? People say it couldn't happen here, and I ask, why not? If you want to destroy a nation, you know a better way to do it than what we're doing. And when you turn against God, God eventually turns against the nation.